Let me ask you a question. What is the one thing in most people's golf swing which holds them back the most, stops them hitting it further, straighter, and being able to control the curve on the golf ball? If you answered the right arm, then you'll be correct, or you'll at least be in agreement with me, because the right arm does all of those things. It helps you create speed, it helps you control the club face, and it also helps you set the plane or the shape of your swing, which is really important for controlling curve. So let's get started by talking about the kind of movements that we have available to us with our right arm. The first movement that I have available to me would be sort of this movement here, and it's probably easy to see from that camera, where I'm changing where my fingers point. Okay, in a golf swing, that would be this movement here. That's the first thing we can do. The second one we can do is we can actually rotate the arm. You can see my palm faces the target, my palm faces the camera. That's arm rotation. That's really important for setting the shape of the golf swing. And the final thing would be we can do this with our hand, where you can see I'm pulling my fingers sort of back up to my shoulder and then towards this shoulder. Again, that's really important. So we're going to go through how those three movements happen in your golf swing, and at the end we're going to cover something which is done so commonly as a fault when people are trying to work on this right arm. You need to make sure you avoid this. I've got a great drill there to help you train this movement. So the first one, how do we create power? This movement. This is power in our golf swing. Now, obviously we don't set up the golf ball and make this movement on its own. It's done mid-swing. But if we were to look at what a golf swing, or where this happens in the golf swing, it happens as we're moving into our backswing. We set our wrists. As we set our wrists, we create energy, we create stored power, which we can use later on down at impact to create some speed. So if you're someone who grips the club super tight, unfortunately there's a lot of you out there, you strangle the club or you're holding on for dear life, that is going to make it a lot more difficult for you to use your wrists. And you're going to find that your backswing becomes very stiff, very wooden. And if you're not using your wrists to create any leverage, any speed, what we often find is that that starts to come from the elbows, and we start to get backswings which look a little bit like this. No wrist set, lots of tension, arms tend to fold. So here's a really, really simple exercise. You're going to take a golf ball or an object, a golf club, it really doesn't matter too much, and you're going to place it probably just inside the width of a golf club behind you. All I'm going to do, very simply, I'm going to take a setup. I'm going to take my lead hand off, and I'm going to make a little movement with my body, a little pivot, and I'm going to try and get the grip to point at that golf ball. As you can see there. Now, I don't know if that's exactly at the golf ball, but it's just a reference point. So as I'm making my little rotation with my body, I'm moving my arm and my wrist to create that angle. And you can see that, give or take, between my forearm and the club shaft is about a 90-degree angle. And that's absolutely fine. We're not looking for absolutes here, but about is fine. And you're going to start to feel very quickly how an incredibly tight hold on the golf club makes that very difficult to do. This is a golf swing. Really important. This golf club has got some weight to it. That weight is focused sort of down here somewhere. And if we are aware of that, you know, if I take my setup and I hover the club and I sort of feel and sense the weight of that club, holding it relatively lightly, and just start to sort of swing it back and forth, and really start to feel how that weight is moving around me, it's going to be much easier to create this. I'm going to feel that weight wants to move up above my hands. And if it moves up above my hands, that's wrist set. Now, take an alignment stick or something that's quite similar, hold it near the end, and your job is, can you create this going back? There's your stored energy. How much noise can you make with the end of that alignment stick? Fair bit. And that's going to feel pretty natural. And that's what we want. We want to try and tap into your natural ability. I know you've all got natural ability, but again, it just wouldn't make a lot of sense to keep that wrist locked in place and kind of do movements like this, which are often what we see when a golfer tries to guide it on the course, or they've not got a lot of, they're not relaxed, there's too much tension in the golf swing. Make it super consistent, super easy. I'm creating my wrist set going back, and I'm releasing it through the ball. That's how we generate speed. So that's our first little part of the golf swing. If I want to hit my ball straight, and I want to hit my ball straight often and repeatably, you've got to control the club face. Right wrist, does that. It's this movement here. We spoke about it right at the start, this movement here. Fingers sort of back towards my forearm, fingers away from my forearm. As I swing back, I have got to be pulling my knuckles back to my forearm that you can see here. So let me show what that would look like. I'm going to take a setup and I'm going to make a backswing. And as I get to the top, you can see that my right wrist is bent. Okay, and you can see how the club face is, hopefully, I can't quite see it here, in the position I want it to be. Now what about if I moved my wrist and I moved my knuckles away from my forearm so I didn't have any bend in my wrist? Well, that is now a relatively flat wrist, I'd argue, and the club face, even though I can't see it, I know is going to be way, way open. Okay, so a flat wrist gives me an open club face. But when I take and address the golf ball, do I have loads of bend in that wrist? Not really. So as we move back, we want to be bending that wrist. I've got to feel as if my right hand sits underneath the golf club. I want to feel as if my right wrist is underneath supporting that golf club. I do not want to feel that my right wrist is to the side of the golf club. That is so important, because if you don't get the club face into the right position at the top, you've got milliseconds to control it or fix it on the way down, and that's what lots of golfers are trying to do, and that's why they're often inconsistent. So when does that wrist go from its setup condition to its bent condition? Well, you actually don't need to worry too much about that. You need to take it from its setup position and you need to move it into the position at the top. And I don't really mind whether that's done relatively early or whether that's done relatively late. What I do mind is that it is in that position at the top. So here's your little exercise. You're going to take a setup without no club, you're just going to swing back and you're going to try and get your right wrist as bent as you can get it. I cannot get my knuckles any closer to my forearm. That's my position at the top, and then the key thing is holding it on the way down. So as I get down towards delivery position, I'm holding my knuckles back, and that is the position I want to be in, which gives me now the ability to control or add the speed, but doing that with a club face which is in position. It's no good creating this angle going back, which is my angle for power, having the wrist flat and being in this position where I've got power stored up but the club face way open. That is just a recipe for disaster. You're creating speed now. You've got a good understanding how to do that. You've now got the club face under control. What else does the right arm do? Well, the right arm rotates. We said that. We can start with the palm here, we can rotate it. That controls the shape of your golf swing. So let me go ahead and take a setup. I'm going to add in my wrist. I'm going to rotate my knuckles and I'm going to move the club back. Does that look like a backswing? Probably doesn't, does it? Club doesn't look as if it's in the right position. So as I rotate my right arm, we find our plane. But as we find it, guess what? We can overdo it, we can underdo it. But this change in angle of the golf club is me rotating my arm. So a perfect backswing would be one where I've created some angle, which is my power. I've bent my right wrist, which controls the club face, and I've folded my right arm, which creates the angle. Now, in order to practice that, we want to give ourselves a channel around the golf ball that you're hitting. So there would be the golf ball I'm hitting, and there's a little channel. And what I can do now is go ahead, let me just move that stick out the way, and point the grip of my club into that channel. Okay? That's me setting the plane of my swing, and I've done that through my right arm. And again, how do we do that with flow and rhythm, and how do we naturally? We get the flow of the golf swing going here. We feel and sense the weight of the club. We work the club head up above the hands as we fold the arm. I'm halfway back and I've got my 3 checkpoints. Angle for power, right wrist is bent, arm has set the plane. I've now got everything I need to be able to deliver the club, swing through and hit it a long way, straight and consistent. There's one thing that people get wrong when they do this, and it's all to do with what they're trying to do on the way down. Too many people try to hold lag. They try to hold this angle here. Okay, let me show you why that's not going to be great for your golf swing, and then I have got a brilliant drill which I know can help so many of you. This is my wrist set. We've explained how we need that, okay? What would happen if I tried to return to the golf ball and did not undo that wrist set at all? Well, the golf club just simply wouldn't reach the golf ball. For it to reach the golf ball, we have to undo that wrist set. But watch what happens if I try to hold that angle for far too long. I'm going to rotate down, I'm going to rotate down, I'm holding it, I'm holding it, I'm holding it, I'm holding it. At some point, I'm going to have to let it go and hit the golf ball, but look where the club is. That club is now going to be coming down steeply into the golf ball. I'm going to react to that by jumping out the way, by standing up in my body. I'm going to feel stuck. I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to have the club sliding across the ball. I'm going to hit fades. I'm going to hit slices. That is so common. Golfers trying to hold this angle far too long. Don't be afraid to let it go. What you do have to hold is this angle in the right wrist and the rotation. Here's the drill I want you to do. Take an alignment stick, okay? And you're going to take this alignment stick and you're going to place it, let's call that 1, 2, 3, 3.5 feet back from the ball and around about a foot inside. Really important you get that in the right place. About 3.5 feet back, a foot inside. Now, because of where that alignment stick is, I can't make a normal backswing. It's going to clatter it. But if I was to get up to the top, my job from here is to bring the club to the golf ball without hitting the alignment stick. And it wouldn't be on this side, which many of you would do quite naturally. It would be on this side. Okay, now that is quite difficult. It's quite extreme. But you can see here I've returned the golf club with the handle forwards, the club face square, and my path and my delivery were perfect. And if you do that with your right arm only, it's going to give you a really good idea and a really good sense of how that right arm needs to move in the dowsing. So many of you will be tipping the club out this way, holding this angle, but not holding this angle. This is the place that I see so many golfers. Then from there, we get all those things that we mentioned earlier. So let me go ahead and do this with both hands, but it would be up, rehearse, 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 and in. Okay, up, rehearse, 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 and in. And I can absolutely go ahead with my 5-iron and just let the ball get in the way. That was a terrible, terrible strike. The ball has not even got airborne and it's gone 15 paces. When you're doing these exercises, you know, try to take away the need to hit perfect shots. We're not trying to hit a big high draw with a 5-iron into the middle of a green. I'm trying to train a new movement, a different movement, something that's not what I currently do. It will feel weird, it will feel strange, but for context, we need a ball. We've got to be making contact with the ball for it to feel anything like a golf swing. So we go up, and I'm training, I'm training, I'm training. Right wrist is bent, arm is rotated. There's my angle. Now I can let that go into the back of the ball. Up, whoop, miss it on the way down, clip it on the way through. This is going to be difficult. If you struggle with your right arm, this is going to be difficult. But if it's difficult, that should be all the information and the evidence you need to suggest that you keep doing it. Train your right arm. It's so important if you want to hit the ball better. Right arm is key to that. Try all those little exercises, those little drills, and finish with this one. This one is the hard one, but it's the one that's going to really elevate you, move you to the next level. Right arm is key in doing that.